This is a video fluid head, video or cinematography. It's 3066 made by Bogen, so Manfrotto Bogen, probably made in the 1990s, so definitely it's used. Still works great. I like using it for still life and product photography. And in this conversation, I'm going to try to introduce you to using a fluid head for product or still life. Um, if you're new to this. And I'm also going to give some information about the head itself in case you decide or come across one and want to know a little bit more about it. I had a hard time finding information on it, and the person that I bought it from really didn't know that much about it either. So let me cut to the chase and say, why do I think this is something that is good for still life or product photography? And the reason comes down to making very precise adjustments on tilting and making very precise adjustments on panning. And not only are they precise, but it's fluid and rather quick to get to that uh, composition that you would like to make. So these heads are made to support a fair amount of weight, and they're meant to be panned or tilted while the camera is running. So obviously in still photography, for the most part, we're not doing that. We set up a composition. You can lock everything down, um, and take your photo. But what I find is once I get the tilt that I want, I don't have to lock it down. In fact, it'll just stay in the position that you leave it in. So this is an example of this. You can imagine that on a ball head, you're not going to let it loose, right? And if you've ever used a ball head and have had it come loose with, maybe a little bit heavier lens, it's not a good feeling to watch the whole thing have to be reconfigured for the composition, and it's an even worse thing if if your camera and the tripod falls to the ground. So you don't have that with this. Similar to a geared head, once you get the orientation that you like, you don't really have to lock it down. Um, so that is a big reason why I enjoy this. The other reason that I enjoy this, let's say over a new geared head, is that I paid $60 for it, and it's substantial. It's not going anyplace. Um, it can be dropped. It probably has been dropped, and I, it's going to outlast me. So, just to give you an idea of that, because the photograph may not show it, it's about 7.7 pounds. It's 6 inches tall. It's 6.5 inches long, and it's 7 inches wide. So, if you think of it as like a cube, maybe it's a 7 by 7 by 7 is the rough measurements for that, and then it's a solid chunk of, let's say, 8 pounds. And then, you have the tripod legs, and you have this thing called a half ball that attaches the camera to the tripod legs. And it's not something you're going to necessarily take on a hike. However, the way that I found out and was kind of introduced to using fluid heads is through photographers that are doing a fair amount of hiking, and they're doing landscapes, or they're doing wildlife photography where they have to track the animals. And they're using these as opposed to using a gimbal, and they're using these as opposed to using, let's say, a very precise geared head, or a very uh, specialty, let's say, ball head, if to really shave down on the weight. And you can find a lot of information about that on YouTube. You simply want to go and look up fluid heads and maybe look up wildlife photography. You don't have to buy the older equipment like you're looking at here. Um, there is one of the things you'll hear about is a Manfrotto 500 AH or a 502 AH. People will talk about Benro as a good alternative to Manfrotto. And you'll get an idea for it. And those videos are going to get into way more detail about how these heads work than I'm going to talk about here. But I got to tell you, every time I've looked at a video head or watched the YouTubes on this, to me it just like really it doesn't seem like it would be worthwhile, or it's too big, or it's too heavy, or whatever. Why don't I go after my fancy ball head and, because that's what I was taught to use is a fancy ball head. So, uh, I don't know that I'm going to say much more about it than that. These things are meant to be leveled, and leveling is what you're going to use the half ball for. So there's a spirit level that's at the base of it, and this 100 millimeter half ball that you're looking at here, it sits in a bowl, and what you end up doing is loosening it and then getting it to the point where the base is level. And once it's level, then any kind of panning that you do, the horizon's going to stay put. And I have issues with that sometimes with the ball head. If I pan to maybe make sure that my background is aligned with my scene, maybe it's bleeding out a little bit too much on one side, then I have to spend a fair amount of time just trying to re-level the ball head, the top of the ball head. And so for me, it's worth it getting the tripod set up and level, because, well, also the way that I work, I'm spending more time configuring lights or configuring a background or configuring the product. Then, I am adjusting my tripod. Once I have my tripod kind of set up, these other things sort of fall into place. So I don't mind using a tripod that requires a little bit of time to get set up, but then as I'm making photographs and spending way more time trying to get those photographs set up, my tripod is then quite fast. Slow to set up, but fast after that. So the way that these things work and the way that this one works is very simplistic. They have they're only going to be working from tilting and panning, and on that they have what's called a drag knob, and the knob that you're looking at here in the center, the big black one, is meant to do the tilt drag, and on the other side of the tripod, under the word Bogen, is a lock off for the tilt. So I typically don't use the lock off because once I get the camera oriented the way that I wanted, or I should say the tripod head oriented the way that I wanted, it tends to stay in place. And, it is very easy to make minutia adjustments on the pan or on the tilt. And it's nice not to be trying to lock, especially it's nice compared to a ball head trying to lock everything down. I should say that on the panning, or I should say on the tilting here, it has a range, this one anyways, goes 90 degrees. And I think if you were to point it up, it would go a maximum of 60 degrees. Video or cinematography tripods typically are meant to be always level. So, it's nice that this one goes to 90, but I'm not sure that you're going to use it in that configuration very often. There is a way that you can control not having the whole thing go down to 90 degrees. Let's see if I can find that here. And so if you look at this photograph, you'll see in the upper left hand of the circle a little silver knob. and that's a screw, and that screw is meant to catch the head from tilting too far down. So if you have it screwed in, it's going to reduce the range. Maybe it only goes down, points down to 60 degrees. I don't really know the exact number. And that was confusing to me because I was wondering, well, what does that knob do and how do I work with that? But, if you screw it all the way out, then you get the full range down to 90 degrees. And while we're on this picture, if you look at the knob that's small and above the center knob, what that does is that's how you slide in the faceplate. And the faceplate on this is big. It is, let's see, I have it here. It's 4 inches by 5.5 inches. You can sort of see it there sitting on an Apple box. I attach an Arca Swiss clamp to it because I use L brackets that are Arca Swiss. And not only is it large, 4 by 5.5. I didn't buy it for this, but it's very stable. So, in this configuration on an Apple box or a piece of wood, you can get a very low angle shot. This camera is stable, even though it's not attached to a tripod. And as far as that goes, you can take the whole fluid head off. The fluid head is, 7.5 pounds roughly. And, let's see if I can find the photo. Where is that? Here it is. It's certainly if you bump it, it's going to move left to right. But if you're careful, and you need the panning, or not the panning, but the tilting, you could put this on an Apple box and get some photographs as well, or, on something solid that's level. The other adjustment that you're going to be making is for controlling the drag on the pan. And the way that you do that, at least on the Manfrotto model, is it's going to be under the faceplate. So, this is the faceplate. I'm going to turn the head around so that you can see the back of it. And if you look in the center of this photo, you'll see a little brass dot. And under that is sort of a knob that you can turn. And that's how you control the tension or the drag, if you will, for panning. And then if you look at the bottom of this photograph, you'll see you'll see the spirit level, that little green bubble in the lower center right. And right below that is a lock off for the pan. And in case you were wondering what are those two little holes that are at the top of the plate, those are where the video arms would go in. Mine did not come with video arms, and I was actually kind of happy for that. I don't want the thing sticking out. I don't want to knock into it on a dark set. But those are standard, and they just make it easier for you to do the panning and the tilting. But this plate is so large, I'm able to grab it with my hands and twist it to do the tilting and adjust it to do the panning. So a lot of quick thoughts in terms of how this head would work, in terms of why I like the head, in terms of why I think it might be a good alternative. Fluid heads in general might be a good alternative, especially if you're thinking about buying a geared head. And it kind of fits in line with some of the other things that I'm trying to do on this channel, which is to borrow ideas that might come from cinematography. So some of the grip equipment that I like to use, some of the ways that I'm trying to control light. And also it fits into sort of this philosophy that there's older, professional, still really nice equipment that's inexpensive. uh, that makes it easy for you to not spend a lot of money and get some good results. So I hope this helps.